Mark Zuckerberg, this morning, stating that free speech has not been a priority at Meta, acknowledging mistakes that have been made by his company, and vowing to do better. Certainly a consequence of November's election, and a day that, frankly, we might look back as a pretty momentous day. And I'm not prone to hyperbole, but this could be one of the most significant days in American history in a long time, because as I said all through this election season, free speech was the most important thing that was on the ballot, and free speech was ultimately the issue that I've driven home the most on this program. You've heard the adage, the freer the speech, the freer the people. And I believe it with every fiber of my being. Because if people are not allowed, if they do not feel the freedom to be able to say what they really believe in public, democracy crumbles and freedom crumbles. And we have seen the push on the left, more censorship, more regulation, more censorship. And Tim Walz, who said there's no right to speech that others might find hateful. There's no right to misinformation. Well, who decides? Was the question that I asked many times. You tell me. I don't want to see anybody spewing hate. Nobody likes to see that. But if you're not breaking the law, you've got a right to your opinion. And other people have the right to reject it, to rebut it, and to cause you to lose in the marketplace of ideas. But the movement from the left, artificially, to limit speech, to silence people who disagree with the chosen preferred media narratives, I think has threatened America's existence. I think it's an existential threat to American life. And I've said before, I think this was the most important election of my lifetime. And elections have consequences. And so this, as we sat here in January, 2 weeks before Donald Trump is inaugurated for his second term as the 47th president of the United States, this to me right now is the biggest consequence that we have seen in the 2024 presidential election. Mark Zuckerberg posting this morning on Facebook a 5-minute and 18-second video in which he details the mistakes that he believes that Meta has made, that Facebook has made, and the steps that he plans to undertake in order to correct them and to promote free speech on the Meta platform. With that being said, let's go to the video that Mark Zuckerberg posted this morning. And what I would like to do is watch it with you, and there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm going to break in, I'm going to pause Zuck periodically to address the things that he said, because there's a short amount of time in 5 minutes, but the amount of information that Zuckerberg covers, the things that he says, has an impact that we may feel in this country for decades to come. And so with that, let's go to the videotape. January 7th, 2025, Mark Zuckerberg.
Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today, because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. and we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots.
Let's pause it right here, Tim. Zuckerberg acknowledging that things have been censored that didn't need to be censored, saying that 1% of unnecessary censorship is millions and millions and millions of people, and referring directly to the shift in this country towards valuing free speech again in a much more tangible way. And again, I don't think Donald Trump would have won this election if not for the issue of free speech. I believe that free speech in an election that was close, I know that Trump likes to call it a landslide. He won by about 2% of the vote. I don't know. Are they still out there counting votes? It's going down a little bit as we go. The margin is being decreased because for some reason in this country, in some places, votes are still being counted. You try to explain that to me. But Trump likes to call it a landslide. It's not a landslide in terms of the Electoral College like Ronald Reagan in 1984, who won 49 states. Walter Mondale got 13 more electoral votes than I did. But the consequences of this election, the consequences of what Donald Trump beating Kamala Harris means for this country cannot be understated. The consequence of this may very well be your ability to go online and say what you really think without worrying about having your voice taken away from you. And that is a fundamental part of the fabric of American life in 2025. Because let's face it, so much of our lives take place online. This isn't 1997 when you had an Angel Fire account or you had a Hotmail or whatever and you were on the internet a little bit here and there. We are living in the future, my friends. 2025, when I was a kid, I couldn't have even conceived of it. It sounds like something from Star Trek. The world exists largely online. You can't work without being online. You can't play without being online. You can't communicate with your friends effectively in many cases without being online. So taking away somebody's right to speak online is fundamentally reaching for their larynx. And look at what's going on in England right now, where the police are showing up at people's homes because they're saying things online that someone else finds objectionable. Their feelings are hurt. So look at where the rest of the world is as you listen to what Zuckerberg says.
Focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US.
Let's pause it right there again, Tim. That's huge. Because again, as I've said, when Tim Walz says there's no right to hate speech, there's no right to misinformation, the question comes down to who decides what is hate speech and who decides what is misinformation. Who are the fact checkers? Who are the fact checkers? This is the question. And what is their agenda? We have looked at it. Look at the mainstream media, folks. The vast majority of them are liberals. The vast majority of them. Studies have been done that reflect it. The majority of people who are going into mainstream legacy media journalism are progressives and liberals. And that bias certainly shows through. You can't divorce yourself from your bias in life. You can't. I'm a sociologist. One of the underlying principles of social science is you try to keep all bias out of what you're doing because it mucks up everything. And so who decides? See, this is the thing. Who decides? Who's the arbiter? So these fact checkers, well, what if I disagree with your facts? Facts suddenly got very subjective in this country, didn't they? Looking at Twitter, I was pleased when Elon Musk bought Twitter because I saw the direction it was going. As a guy who has been on Twitter every day, literally for over 10 years, I saw the changes that were occurring. People having their accounts suspended. The Babylon Bee had their account taken away from them for calling a biological male a biological male. That's where we were headed. People were losing their accounts for dead naming people. Somebody who's trans, they're called by the name that they were born with. People were losing their jobs, their livelihoods, because of arbitrary decisions that were being made, that were not rooted in undeniable, this is the only way that it can be looked at. It was opinion. And if you didn't agree with the opinion of the overlords, your punishment was losing everything in some cases. It can't be understated. Let's go back to Zuck and let him continue.
First got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse.
Let's hit this again, Tim. When did it become out of touch? See, Zuckerberg is going to deal with so much criticism for this. I told Tim this morning, the guy's in a no-win position. He's doing the right thing, but a lot of people are rightfully asking today, why did it take so long? The alternative would be worse. Zuckerberg did nothing. Well, that obviously is a greater problem. I fully support what Zuckerberg is doing, but you don't have to be one of the world's most hardened cynics to think to yourself, well, why is he doing it? Is he worried about Donald Trump? Is he worried about what's going to happen now that somebody else is going to be in power? Well, most likely. And so we're going to sit here and talk about the legalities of it. He could be facing a lot of lawsuits, class action lawsuits, because people are asking the question, why now? Why did it take so long? He's acknowledging the problems with the fact checkers. He's acknowledging that speech was suppressed. But this comes 2 months after the election. If Kamala Harris had won the election, would we be seeing the same viewpoints expressed by Mark Zuckerberg? Would he have done the same thing? It makes one wonder. But what we are seeing is, for all the criticism that Elon Musk got, and people had so little confidence in Elon Musk, they thought X was literally going to stop working 2 or 3 days after he took the controls. Remember how he was being mocked, ridiculed? He's the template. Community notes. Welcome to Meta, community notes. Elon Musk, the influence. X leading the way. And now Meta falling in, and the questions that are going to be asked soon are, what about Google? What about YouTube? What about the other platforms that have been so ham-fisted in cracking down, demonetizing, deplatforming people who were saying things that their fact checkers had a problem with? Think about that as Mark Zuckerberg continues.
Movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed, so we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive. Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to
promote...
All right,
let's pause it again, Tim. California to Texas. How about that? California. Elon Musk said that if Donald Trump didn't win this election, the Democrats were going to try to reshape the battleground states to the point where they were no longer battleground states and America effectively would become a big California. Because you would have a one-party monopoly. And that's what you have in California. I'm not going to sit here and rehash all the things that are wrong with California. But you know what a lot of them are. So the exodus from California to Texas. And I want to go back to Zuckerberg talking about how what began as a push for inclusiveness just went too far in silenced speech. But you know what? I think a lot of the push for inclusiveness was trying to silence dissent pretty much from the jump. If we're really being honest with ourselves. The idea, how many times have we heard it? If you disagree with anything, you're a bigot. You're far right. You're an extremist in some kind of way. You have abhorrent opinions, and then you lose friends. We've seen so much of this, the moralizing, the lecturing, the telling people that they're a horrible person if they disagree. Was never inclusive from the beginning, nor do I think it was ever intended to be inclusive. It was simply using inclusiveness as a blunt force instrument to get what they wanted. A blunt force instrument used against conservatives or anyone who wasn't in lockstep with what the progressive woke left was pushing for. We've said it before, far right has basically come to mean anybody who is a little bit to the right of being batshit fucking crazy. For me to be called far, do I look like I'm from the far right to you? I look like I had to put out a blunt just to come in here and do this show. That's not the case, but I smoked one last night while I was listening to music that probably would not ordinarily be considered the music of Jerry Falwell. No, I'm an American who loves my country and loves freedom and recognized that the left's objective at some point became perverted and started to point in the direction of trying to limit the very essence of freedom itself. Let's go back to Zuckerberg and let him continue.
I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
We're going to stop removing so much content. Well, better late than never, buddy. Better late than never. And we're going to have to monitor this story closely as we go forward. But it feels pretty good. It feels pretty good today for free speech advocates all over this country and indeed all over the world. America should be setting the standard for an abiding faith and belief in free speech. And maybe we can help England try to get themselves back into some semblance of control. What we're seeing in Canada with Trudeau announcing his resignation. Maybe Canada can start to roll things back. But we don't ever want to get to the point that Canada is at, and we certainly don't want to get to the point that England is at, ever in this country. And this election may have been our last opportunity to prevent it from happening. And I love what I'm hearing from Mark Zuckerberg this morning, whatever his motivation is, even if it's cynical. But he kind of got busted, didn't he? He kind of got busted. It felt like Zuckerberg, even though I'm glad I heard what I heard, it felt a little bit like he knew he had it coming, and he came out and he faced the music. A lot like this kid, holding a sign that says, "I smoked pot and watched porn and got caught, so this is my punishment." That's some punishment to inform the community that you're fucking awesome. I want to hang out with that kid. Coolest kid in his town, Dana White, is going to be involved in Meta now, named to the board of directors, board of trustees. Dana White, one of the most outspoken free speech advocates and Donald Trump allies that there is in this country right now. Washington Post doesn't like it. Look at this. UFC's Dana White joins Meta's board as company moves closer to Trump. Well, that's true. That's true, though. They did move closer to Donald Trump. Meta has moved closer to Donald Trump. Also, Meta moved closer to Ricky Cobb, Ronnie T-shirts, and George Washington as well. Because where Donald Trump is standing in the American political landscape of 2025 is with free speech. So yes, good. They did move closer to Donald Trump. And Washington Post, when you figure out that where Donald Trump is a lot more righteous than you want to believe as you continue to paint him in such an inaccurate way, you still don't get it. You still don't get it. Yes, he's moving closer to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not the bogeyman. He's not Michael Myers. He's not coming. Let's go to Dana White right now, because Dana White certainly had some strong words not very long ago about free speech. And think about it as you watch this. This is a guy that is going to be standing shoulder to shoulder with Mark Zuckerberg now.
About, like, you obviously give a long leash to your fighters about, what they can say when they are up there with a UFC microphone, and you are getting into territory of homophobia, transphobia. Like, is there...
I don't give anybody a leash.
Well, I'm saying you...
A leash?
Like...
Free speech. I control what people say. Going to tell people what to believe. Going to tell people... I don't fucking tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes on any of them. What is your question?
I was asking that question. I'll move on, though.
Yeah, probably a good idea. That's ridiculous to say I give somebody a leash. Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want and they can believe whatever they want.
Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want. They can believe whatever they want, whether I agree with it or not. So let's start with Stephen A. Smith, who is out there exercising his right to free speech as he likes to do every day of his fucking life. And he's commenting about Black Monday You may be aware the first Monday after the end of the NFL season, a lot of coaches get fired. Gerard Mayo, he didn't even make it to Black Monday. It was Black Sunday for him as the Patriots announced that they were moving on from him just hours after the Patriots beat the Buffalo Bills. Doug Peterson of the Jacksonville Jaguars joined him in the unemployment ranks the following day. But Stephen A. had some interesting words to say about Gerard Mayo. And let's go to the tape right now, and then we'll break it down.
That's what this is about. This is about Mike Vrabel. That's who they wanted. No question about it. And he's a more seasoned, more experienced coach. I don't like this. They call it Black Friday Black Monday rather for a reason. This certainly typifies it. I don't know why it's not called White Monday. Doug Peterson got fired from Jacksonville. He deserved that firing. Gerard Mayo clearly was not given an opportunity, a lengthy enough opportunity, considering what Bill Belichick left him with from a talent perspective. Considering the record, considering the way the team performed. He didn't help himself with some of the comments he made, calling the team soft and what have you, and having to retract statements, and we get all of that. But no matter what we can point to, at the end of the day, the folks in New England were turning against Gerard Mayo. We all know this. And I think it has something to do with the fact that Vrabel is available, and that's really what's going on here. They don't want to lose him, especially to a team like the New York Jets. They want to be in the running, and they can't do that with him as the head coach.
Absolutely.
So Stephen A. couldn't resist making the racial comment. I don't know why they don't call it White Monday. Why do we have to do things like this? Can't you be above that? You got two coaches. Let's talk about Gerard Mayo and Doug Peterson. They both went 4-13. Mayo in his first season in New England. Peterson's been in Jacksonville for a few years. They both went 4-13. Can you make the argument that Gerard Mayo deserved more time? Yes, you could make that argument. Can you make the argument that 4-13 is an unacceptable result and enough time in many cases for an owner to assess his coach and decide that that's not the right coach at the right time for that organization? Of course you can. One black coach, 4-13, fired. A white coach, 4-13, fired. If Stephen A. Smith owned the New England Patriots, it wouldn't have been a bad decision necessarily to bring Mayo back. Certainly that's a defensible position. But Stephen A., the last time I checked, doesn't own the New England Patriots. That's Robert Kraft. And Robert Kraft is 83 years old. And he's not going to live forever. And he wants to win another Super Bowl in his lifetime. 4-13 coach, fired. Why do you want to bring race into that? If it was a 13-4 coach and he got fired, well, then let's talk about it, because we need to start searching for answers. When a team goes 4-13, things happen. And sometimes they lose their job, no matter what the color of their skin is. And I would certainly hope, and I would certainly believe, that there's no reason to think that race played any issue in this. And Black Monday, Black Friday. Black Friday's a good thing. Right? I don't know. Have you ever thought about it? I think you got to go out of your way. I have never connected Black Friday to race once in my life. I just haven't been on that frequency. Never thought about it in terms of Black Monday either. I don't think that 99% of us, at least 99% of us that are right-thinking people, are walking around with race on our mind all the time, to the point that we start looking for these strained comparisons that we can make just because of the name of something. But Stephen A., you got the right to say it. And I got the right to sit here and have a different viewpoint on that matter. Sonny Hostin has the right to say things that are, quite frankly, a lot stupider than anything that came out of Stephen A.'s mouth. And rather than try to describe for you the magnitude of this whopper, and I have to tell you, we criticize The View on this show pretty frequently. This might be maybe the single dumbest thing that I've ever heard come out of the mouth of anybody from the cast of The View. And it comes courtesy of Sonny Hostin.
I think we need to find moral clarity. in this country. And I just remember after January 6th, you had someone like Mitch McConnell placing the blame on January 6th where it belonged, squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders. And then you started seeing people backtrack that and losing their moral center. You had Condoleezza Rice, I believe, on this very show saying, we need to move on from January 6th. I say no. You don't move on, because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery, we need to never forget, because past becomes prologue if you forget any race.
All right.
I want to ask you.
All right, enough of this. World War II, 9/11, and slavery. And January 6th. Do you remember when you were a kid? I know some of you are old enough that you remember Sesame Street. They used to play a song, and they would do this thing that was, one of these things is not like the other. Do you remember that? And it would be up to you. It'd be like 3 cows in a pickle, and your dumb little ass would be asked to figure out which one of these things is not like the other. Well, I think it's the pickle. I'm not even going to get into the particulars of January 6th. And there's a lot that we could do. I'm not even going to lift the lid on that. But World War II, tens of millions of people dead. 9/11, worst mass casualties in the history of our country, in our homeland. And slavery, perhaps the worst shame in the history of the operation of the United States government. And then we're going to add J6 to it. If you don't see the difference, I can't help you. Again, though, Sonny Hostin, you got the right to say it, and I got the right to sit here and say that Disney, the parent company of both ESPN and ABC, where we hear things like this all too frequently, has mouse ears and is wearing clown makeup. That's my right to free speech today. And with that said, I now bring in the international streaming star from Nashville, Tennessee, Ronnie T-Shirts. And Ronnie, lot to digest this morning with this is a heavy news day, obviously. What are your quick thoughts on Zuckerberg and the statement that he released this morning?
Oh, you're going to have me suppress what I want to say about Sonny right now?
Well, I thought maybe you were going to self-suppress what you were going to say about Sonny, because we all know your distaste for her.
Dude, she has every right to say whatever she wants. And she did it. I'm like, I can feel it right now. Like, I literally am having a visceral reaction right now, Ricky. She can fuck the fuck off when she compares anything to the Holocaust. You didn't even mention it in your recap of what she said. But when you do that, you can fuck off. That is heinous. It is heinous. It's so disrespectful to every Jew that's still alive. It's disrespectful to what happened. It's one of the most heinous things that has ever happened in the history of this world. And
6 million dead, Ron, over 6 million dead in the Holocaust, and killed and treated in the worst way that you could imagine. It's something that everybody should know about, but it's something that at the same time is so hard for people with, if you possess a heart, knowing the details of what happened in the Holocaust will absolutely break it in half. It is one of the, if not the most inhumane, terrible chapters in the history of humanity. And she throws it around casually. She throws it around casually like it's nothing.
Ricky, I shared this on the show before. Lori and I visited Auschwitz about 5 years ago. And everything I thought I knew about concentration camps, I didn't know a quarter of what went on. It's heinous, repugnant. Again, visceral reaction right now to a human being trying to compare anything. And when I say anything, I'm going to go ahead and leave. There's some awful things happening in other parts of the world, and they have happened in Africa and China and things like that. Those are also heinous. And if you want to try to draw a line to that, then we could probably go ahead and have that conversation. But to say that what happened on January 6th was even in the same, it's not even in the same ballpark. It's not in the parking lot. It's not in the same city. It's not in the same state. It's not even in the same country. She can fuck off. I know you're not going to watch this, Sonny, but you can fuck off.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.